time, 4:30.
It is 4:30, yeah. And I'll give it just a second because I know we're missing some directors too.
Ethan can make it, so, and Marcos can too. So everyone should be here.
Okay, cool. Well, then I'll just give it a second more for them to pop in and then we can get started. Hope everyone is having a good, hopefully post-finals day.
My finals went amazing.
I'm glad to hear that, Kirsten. I'm sure you passed with flying colors.
Actually, I am taking a class at City College. I'm taking Italian, but it's a midterm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
I hear that's difficult when you don't have a bunch of Italians to talk to all day.
Yeah, it's very cool though. We do meet weekly with a woman who's is part of our class, and she lives in Rome. But yeah, you're right. It would be nice if I had a house full of Italians.
Yeah.
All right, I see another director has joined us, and I know others will soon as well. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. We'll call this meeting to order. And Jonathan, can you do a roll call?
Yes. Just admitting someone. Director Brent.
Yes.
Director Flaherty.
Here.
Director Bertrand is not here yet. Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
Director Geis.
Here.
And Director Dessler.
Here.
And also a reminder, the meeting is being recorded today. So before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Iniscoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. So now we're going to go to public comment period, but this is a public comment for things that are not currently on our agenda. So if anyone has any public comments on things not on the agenda, now's your time. Feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment. And we're going to move to discussion and action. First is the consideration of Taste of Isla Vista partnership budget. And I think to start the discussion off, I will note for directors that if you click on either that or the 3.2 link, consideration of contract and Lucidity, these two items, I think we can consider them both together because I think they both tie into each other. And you'll see, you click on that sort of a report about sort of a synopsis of what we're considering with the Taste of Isla Vista event. And before we start, I just do want to acknowledge and say a big thank you to Associated Students for all their help and support in this process. So we as a district discussed this a couple of weeks ago, or probably months ago at this point, about what can we do to try and make Deltopia safer? What can we do to try and reduce the amount of COVID infections and make it a healthier event? And out of that process, we had a lot of ideas, and we had some great discussions with UCSB, with the county, with student groups. And this is sort of where we have landed in terms of something that we think is going to have a really significant effect when it comes to taking a harm reduction lens to what we know is going to happen on April 3rd, Deltopia, and trying to give people a safer and healthier alternative. So again, just a big thank you to everyone who has helped sort of put this proposal together. And I think with that, I'll just hand it over to Jonathan if you want to introduce this item for us.
Yes, there's a lot to introduce. So The first part we're gonna have is this overview proposal of what this is. Spencer's already covered part of this. We have some folks, some associate students here who we're gonna ask to describe their parts of the event. We'll go through this proposal more fully. I'll link to this is what Lucidity's specific proposal to us is, because this is our event with the AS's event and ours. It's a partnership, and we're bringing on Lucidity to help us with core elements, but some we are handling ourselves. But we do have another document here just showing you, like, this is going to be another one where we look at Lucidity's budget and then the overall event budget. So there's a lot to review. I think the first part is that the dining and local restaurants. This is the core part of the event. This is what the description we have, and I'm going to turn it over in a second to Deanna to explain this before we go into the rest of the event, since this is the core program part, which is the food giveaway piece, which is what makes it the Taste of Isla Vista. So I'm going to turn it over to Deanna right now, if she is on. If you could please, Deanna, talk a little bit about what AS is planning on the food distribution part of this, and then I'll take it on and finish the rest.
Sounds great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Puente. I serve as the Director of Community Affairs, Student Development, and Leadership for Associated Students. And really happy to be part of this conversation. Just to preface it by saying that this conversation, as always, we've had many years of talking about Deltopia, but this kind of iteration of what we might be able to do really came about over this last week or so. And so we're still very much putting the details together. Everything is tentative. But in our discussions between AS and the IVCSD, we developed this idea of a Taste of Isla Vista, kind of an event happening only on Saturday, April 3rd. And of course, as a direct response to Deltopia, wanting to make sure that we're not only mitigating the safety concerns around Deltopia, also around COVID-19, and also believe that this would be a great opportunity to support our local businesses. And so the idea of it is that AS Program Board and the IVCSD would each be providing a certain number of tickets. AS Program Board would provide it for the student population in IV, and the CSD for the non-student population of IV. These tickets, excuse me, would be, we're looking right now at a budget of $15 per ticket that could be redeemed at participating businesses on that day. And so what would happen would be that folks would pre-register for the tickets. Both students and other community members would be able to pre-register for tickets. They would then be distributed on Saturday between 11 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. At the safety stations that we're looking to set up with, that CSD will be setting up at Little Acorn Park, hopefully, and also at the Perdal Center. After that, folks with those tickets can go to the businesses during their regular hours of operation. So depending, each ticket would be for a specific business. And so depending on when they're open, that would be the opportunity for our community members to go there. This is also, as I mentioned before, so we did reach out starting on Thursday. We contacted already some of these businesses. I have 20 on my list. 10 of those have already expressed very solid interest in participating. Again, since all of this is still tentative, we have not locked it all down. We're trying to make sure that we understand what the capacity is of businesses to have potentially many thousands of tickets being redeemed on that day, what their capacity is both throughout the whole day and also during certain times of the day. And so still gathering that information from them, but it does look really good in terms of their interest. So as I mentioned, 10 have said yes, 10 are still pending, probably more to be added to that pending list, and 2 that have said at this point, they don't think that they would participate. I am following up with them just to understand if there are some barriers for them that we could lower in terms of, making sure that they're able to participate in this event. In addition to that, and I'll just turn it back over to the CSD because we will be having, of course, support for those businesses from the guardians so that they're helping to kind of monitor social distancing and safety outside of each of those restaurants. And I will turn it back over to you all, and I can jump in on any of the other items that we've discussed that are kind of the broader things that will be happening around the loop and in Isla Vista on that day.
Thank you, Deanna. Yes, we're definitely very appreciative of associated students for taking on such a huge part of the budget of this event, and coming up with this idea really of the meal tickets and working with the restaurants to distribute from them, not at any location, since they have that infrastructure set up. One thing I do want to note, it is literally brand new information since I just received an email on it a minute ago, is we won't be able to distribute tickets at the Little Acorn Park, just at the Pardal Center, but we will have a safety station at both. We wouldn't be doing ticket distribution from any parks in Isla Vista. Just to follow on what Deanna's saying, so the plan is that we're going to have these restaurants participating. They'll be picking up meal tickets at Pardal, taking it to a restaurant. I believe the pickup times are staggered just for additional safety. The site, so one next component that we're working on is that Spencer's been communicating with Public Works, and we've got the application now, so it's not confirmed yet, but it's in the works. And our county supervisor is completely aware, and so is law enforcement, is working to close off Pardal between the Del Norte and Del Mar, and then also on the section between Del Mar and the traffic stop barrier before Pescadero. And so that we would be using Pardal as since many businesses don't have very much outdoor dining in Isla Vista, and indoor dining, if allowed by then, would be pretty limited. We would be providing outdoor dining tables on Pardal as a way for residents to enjoy the food that they've picked up with their household from Pardal Center, from their meal ticket there. And we'll have Big Green. We've already worked with them to make sure they'd be available, and we have a budget for them to be available that day to clean and sanitize each table as every diner exits. Another thing that Lucidity will be doing for that day, we've discussed a lot of different safety stations and distribution. So they're going to develop a site plan for the loop. That site plan is going to involve just the traffic plans for the closure of Pardal. It's going to involve the different porta potties and hand washing stations, which restaurants will be participating, where the closures will be. So that's a core component of what we are providing to this event, is having this security site plan that's supposed to also promote safety. And that's another thing. Lucidity is going to source and provide porta potties, bathrooms, sanitation stations, like we already have some in Isla Vista, as well as the seating and tables that will be on Pardal. We've worked with UCPD to make sure that we've got the safety stations at the Pardal Center and at Little Acorn Park still, and they're thinking of moving one to Window to the Sea in the later part of the day if that's necessary. And again, in terms of the safety, I'm going to move to that before outreach. Yes, like Deanna mentioned, we're going to be working with bringing on the Guardian team to do two things for us. One, they'll deploy a first aid tent with the same group we had considered using last year for the festival, RGX. So they would be able to take care of a good number of issues as residents experience them, and provide a sort of sanctuary space for people who are too drunk. So they would be providing that, but the Guardians would be really providing de-escalation and COVID safety protocol promotion as residents are on the public right-of-ways, entering and standing in line for the restaurants and leaving them. And they'd also have PPE and hand sanitizer to give to people who might not have a mask as they're going to a restaurant. They can hand them a mask so they can be able to go in there. And then the last component of this would be outreach. Again, we're working with, we just left a meeting before this. We've got 2 marketing meetings tomorrow. So we're collaborating with the county, UCSB, City College, associated students, and all others related to have unified messaging about both, yes, the Deltopia restrictions of that day and the event itself. So that's the general overview. I just want to move over to what the Lucidity, what their proposal is, which is they're going to do event management and creation for us. They're going to work on the site operations. This is the main piece that we need them to work on, which is the development of the site plan, supporting us in the street closure, supporting us with the porta potties and hand washing, the tables and chairs, and the medical HQ. Some fun things they're going to do. They're going to have some roving characters that they've developed to promote COVID safety in a fun way around the loop. They'll be roaming around the sidewalks. We're going to put some decor and information on the table, COVID safety, some other promotion. I think Deborah had the idea to promote See, Click, Fix at the tables as people are eating. And then also some sort of gamification. And this is something where UCSB is looking to contribute a lot of prizes and giveaways like they did at UC Davis. And so Lucidity is able to help organize the, how people can win those prizes. And there have been different ideas already of, people just wearing their mask on the sidewalk being a good example to, not having any violations at their household to, I don't know, there's lots of different ideas, potentially going on a scavenger hunt that's socially distanced. So we're working on how to provide, prizes, which were very popular during Halloween, to help promote good behavior. And then the last piece is the guardianship, which is line management on the public right of way. And this is just an example of what they're thinking for the outdoor dining. All these plans will be approved by Santa Barbara County Public Health to make sure that how we're doing outdoor dining is in complete compliance with the guidelines. And then I just want to move over to just an overview budget of how we would afford this. The first thing is the board has already allocated $55,000 for community festivals, anticipating that something was going to happen this April. Even knowing COVID was going on, we did still budget $55,000 for this. In October, we eliminated the community policing fund and moved that to the community special projects. And we used $18,000 of that $30,000 for the Halloween at Home festival, virtual festival. So we've got, I said we have 10,000 left, and we've got 1,500 left in our COVID-19 campaign that UCSB provided us funding for to get COVID-19 messaging out into the community. And that's going to help us pay for our door hanger, which we're doing again. The things that we've been asked to take on, are water for the community because AS has restrictions in their policies on spending on water. We would be taking on water and water distribution through Lucidity. We'd be handling our food contribution, 350 meals to cover the non-UCSB students. The door hanger, printing and design, this is how much it cost last time. And then the Lucidity services for $35,000, the Guardian services for $20,000, and then finally the cleaning services from Big Green Cleaning for $1,000. And so that's where the budget comes out to. It's a total of $65,000, and the funds we would have available to something like this are $66,500. So a tiny amount of wiggle room if anything did change. But we do have this, it fits completely within our allocated line items. We're not moving anything around like we were considering last year to make this happen. So I think that's the overview at this point. As many details as we're able to provide, I think we just want to stress, in the contract itself, we do have a provision in here that everything that will be approved by Santa Barbara County Public Health. That is that's something when we were meeting with county and UCSB and law enforcement yesterday was a lot. We had shared with them all this. We've shared this with as many of the stakeholders as we can and decision makers. And that was asked to be added into our contract, that it's all plans, procedures, and operations for this event will be reviewed and approved by Santa Barbara County Public Health. besides that, and we've also worked with the Ivy Foot Patrol, Lieutenant Camarena. I've completely filled him in on this, and he doesn't believe there'll be any problems from a law enforcement side of closing Pardal or hosting this event. So we are still waiting on final approval, of course, on all these plans, but the plans, many of them, they're just starting to exist. So we're all, but of course, any plans that we do put into motion will have the approval of all the necessary people, including the County Public Health Department. So yeah, Spencer, I don't know if you want to mention anything else. I know there are a couple points that you like to highlight when we're talking about this.
Sure, thanks, Jonathan. I thought it was an excellent presentation. The only thing that I will really punctuate is about the system that we have in place in order to prevent outsiders or prevent this event from drawing in outsiders to the community, which is of paramount importance whenever we're talking about Deltopia every year. And what we did was we sort of modified the plan that we had from last year's event that never ended up taking place, where we have a pre-registration system. Each attendee is going to be asked in order to be able to sign up and say, I want to go get my free food for their ILS to address. And I think that that's a really important thing to underscore because it is very important that we try and make sure that this is primarily people who live here. We don't want people from the outside coming in. And the last thing that I'll say is that, with how quickly everything has come together, I think that one thing to keep in mind is that if you were to have told me that we would even be in the situation now in the red tier in Santa Barbara County, where our COVID numbers have decreased up to this point, honestly, maybe it's just a little bit of pessimism on my part, but I would have definitely been shocked. We have made significant progress. And with that progress comes some difficulties. It means that it's harder for law enforcement to make sure that residents are not gathering in these super spreader events because the laws are loosened up as we move through the tiered system. It also means that some things that, from the research I've read are really risky, such as indoor dining, are now allowed. And so our thought was, how can we try and provide a space for the activities that we know are of lower risk and promote those for our residents and give them something fun to do rather than just telling people, don't do this, don't do that, because I think it only gets us so far. So with that, I think now is probably a good time for our board, if we can open it up for questions about the proposal and the budget and the contract. Director Freeman.
So first, so this is just clarifying questions, not my opinion on anything yet. I've got two things. First of all, Jonathan had mentioned that we're unable to use Little Acorn Park, and I'm wondering if Jonathan can provide everyone color on what happens, like what happened.
We are able to use Little Acorn Park for safety station, not for telling people to pick up their ticket there. We're just gonna use Pardal Center for that.
That was the park district saying no, or?
Yes, that was Park District didn't think that they would want that to happen there.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, so we've got the budget and the revenue projections, things like that. There's also ticket sales that are going on. The ticket sales go to Associated Students, are covering part of the Associated Students budget for this, and just verify that that's not, the things that we're looking at spending, we're not getting ticket funding. Ticket funding is not going to us, right? We're talking about the $60,000 budget for the food and things we're doing, and that's separate.
Yeah, I mean, the AS is going to handle the registration of tickets and the pickup of tickets. We are having a budget where we would be giving AS that funding to cover the tickets of non-UCSB students. but AS is handling, people who do register and distributing the tickets. I'll turn it over to Deanna to answer a bit more.
Just to kind of excuse me, clarify that a little bit though. We have not figured out yet what the payment system would be for those payments to be made to the businesses, whether that would be necessarily something that AS would be doing, or whether the CSD would be handling the tickets that they're paying for separately in terms of the payment, so that we still do need to figure out what would be the best way to work around that. But yes, those would not be commingled. Student tickets would be paid by AS, non-student tickets would be paid by the Community Services District. And of course, we're paying for those tickets are being paid fully by those entities. There's no additional payment that any student would make. So there's no purchase of tickets happening in that regard, Jay. I'm not sure if you're talking about.
Okay, I didn't catch something then. So I was the tickets are not being sold. The tickets are just part of the pre-registration system. They pre-register, they get a free ticket, but we're not selling tickets.
Yes. Yes. No, they're just worth $15.
They're just worth. Okay, they're worth it. Okay. All right. I would call them a voucher then or something, not a ticket. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Those are my two clarifying questions. I have many opinions, but those are my two questions.
Thank you, Director Freeman. Are there other clarifying questions from the board? Director Bertrand and then Director Deschler.
Thank you. As a clarifying question, I'm curious about if there will be any entertainment for the dining areas during the event, other than the characters that are roaming around.
There's no specific entertainment for outdoor dining right now. I mean, there's some ideas that we'll have some sort of decor or collateral on the tables that will have information and maybe some art. And one idea is maybe that Lucidity has had is they can curate a playlist that people who are sitting eating together can play and listen to. But that's the extent of the table entertainment.
Got it. And then my other question is, do we know right now, I mean, I understand it's still being developed, but as far as our message to the wider community about what Deltopia should be this year and how people can stay safe either before or after they come to this event, because this is just going to be part of someone's experience on Deltopia. Do we know what that messaging is right now?
We're working on it, but we're working with everybody on it. It is going to be a core component of this. Is I think it's mentioned in our overview that when someone pre-registers for a ticket, one thing we've discussed is you get a list of COVID safety information. Maybe watch a video as you're registering for the ticket. That was something that was brought up. We're going to have the door hanger again, like we did last time, where one side is promoting the event and the other side is promoting the current COVID guidelines. So it'll be part of all the messaging. And we actually have 2 meetings about messaging tomorrow, and we'll be working on it that way.
Got it. Thanks.
Oh, and I do want to mention that everything is being run. The county behavioral wellness, who's leading the COVID messaging, is leading one of our meetings tomorrow, and then we're working with AS after that on now that we have the best information, how do we get that to people in a good way?
Thanks for that. And I see Rodney from Associated Students. Did you have something to add as well to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that so far the thought is that in any messaging that is done from this event, it will not contain any mention of Deltopia. It's a totally separate, say the IV Fest, Taste of Isla Vista, that kind of thing, but there will be no mention of Deltopia in the messaging.
Thanks for that, Rodney. And I'll go to Director Deschler and then Director Flaherty.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the time we ask questions. I'm gathering. I wanted to ask a couple questions about the budget. It seems a large amount of money for a 4.5-hour event or a 5.5-hour event. And I just wonder if it's normal to not have more description and breakdown of expenses. So like lucidity services, 35,000, event planning, 10,000. That's, and then hand washing. It just seems like there's big numbers and not a lot of detail. So that's one thing I had a question about, like how many people are we talking about? How many number of hours? It just seems like it's vague.
No.
Yeah.
I can answer that.
Okay.
I can answer that. So yes, it is vague. And it is different than last year. Last year we actually did have very specific breakdowns, like hour of this person is worth this much, and they're going to be doing that for that hour. But we did only tell Lucidity about this on Friday, and that, you know, we didn't even have full clarity of what we were really asking for them until, you know, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. And so they provided as much information as possible in terms of the breakdown that Spencer and I were working with them to secure. And, you know, at one point it was just 30,000 is their whole number, and that's all we had. And we broke it down to this, and but we have this information, and we've seen how their breakdowns look before, and it is consistent. I mean, it is a smaller event, so this is, you know, a smaller budget than before in some ways. So
thank you. And then I wanted to ask, so I understand this is a partnership with AS, Program Board, AS, and IVCSD. And so when I look at the budget, I see IVCSD's contributions, and it seems like AS Program Board, their contribution is going to be buying the tickets for UCSB students. Is that correct?
That, and, you know, other things, they've been working on event planning too. So lots of staff time going into it.
Okay. And then my next question was the $15 voucher. Are there any restrictions on how that $15 can be spent? And are there any limitations on what can be purchased with that $15?
Yes, I'll turn it over to Deanna to describe that, since she's been designing and working on that.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Kirsten. So on the AS side, the $15 continues to meet all of our financial guidelines in terms of expenditure. So, for example, that money could not be spent on alcohol, for sure. We're still figuring out the question about what kind of flexibility do we need to provide that's going to make this not be kind of an undue hardship on the businesses to kind of manage. Our main thinking is that we would have each of the businesses develop kind of a special menu for that day for the Taste of IV. And so they would put together the things that would equal a $15 meal ticket. Some businesses, of course, have a little bit harder time with doing that. So some of the questions that we're getting back is, could we just do a coupon, for example, like a discount for $15 off whatever the meal is? That from our end becomes a little bit more difficult to like manage and to have good oversight to make sure that, you know, alcohol isn't being put into that or something else. So that's really, you know, the idea of it really is that it's meant to serve meals on that day. And to just get some food into the bellies of the students and the community members. And we are just what Program Board is still deciding, and the financing from Program Board still has not been finalized, but they are looking to potentially fund up to 6,000 tickets at this price. And of course, Program Board will also be doing the concert, the virtual concert that evening. And we'll be doing some other other types of support for all those efforts.
Thank you. That's really interesting, the 6,000 tickets. Do we have a sense of the capacity of that area?
That's such a great question, because that is absolutely the question. So it would be the 6,000 from AS plus the 335, of course, from the CSD. We are gathering that data as fast as we can to see what capacity would be in IV on that day. Right now, the numbers I have from the kind of the top capacity businesses that have indicated that they're interested, we're at about close to 4,000 meals just from those initial 10 restaurants. So this is going to be an experiment to see, you know, if we can actually get to those numbers.
Thank you, Deanna.
Of course.
Director Flaherty, you're next.
Hello. So just, I wanted to clarify too, I know that I am a Senator's Associated Students, but I checked with our district council, Ross, and he didn't find any conflict of interest, so I can participate in this discussion. I just wanted to clarify that. And I did have a question more directed towards AS, and it was about the concert, but you did say that the concert is still happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I was just wondering, for like picking up tickets, would there be a system where you sign up to pick up like the vouchers at a certain time so that a huge group of people don't come in just because it's only at Pardall Center? Would there be like a time slot that you come to pick it up, and like what would be the deadline be to signing up for the voucher? And then I also had a question too on what conversations with public health looked like as well. I know that was kind of a lot of
On to
questions.
the question
Sienna,
about
you can
the-
answer.
Yes. So in terms of exactly your questions, Catherine, we are looking at having the distribution of tickets happen. And now that we just learned about not having Little Acorn Park, we'll have to, again, think very closely about it. We have to also make sure we have permission for folks to come to the Pardall Center for the same reasons that no one is allowed on campus. The Pardall Center is a university property, so we have to get those restrictions lifted also on that day. But yes, we're looking at having people, when they register for the ticket, when they pre-register for the ticket, they would be given a time during the day when they can come by and pick up that ticket, so that we do disperse people. From our purposes for AS, we really are looking much more of this being an intervention than an event, I would say, right? We are really much more just wanting to make sure that we have things spread out as much as possible. So that's very much, front and center for our thinking about any aspect of this. And so, but still to be determined exactly what that would look like in terms of the distribution of those tickets on that day. And as far as your question about a cutoff for pre-registration, I don't think we've gotten that detail nailed down yet.
In terms of public health conversations, the county CEO office is talking with public health on our behalf on this. And they're fully aware of the plans, and they have made public health aware. And what we're hearing is they're still finalizing review and everything, but what they did ask us to add into our contract was that all plans are subject to final approval from public health. But they are aware. They are, it's been discussed. They've seen, all the attachment that you've seen. It's been forwarded to them as well.
Any other questions for board members? I'll go to Director Geis and then Director Fried.
This just is a question that if the businesses in IV don't have the capacity for those kinds of volumes of food, have we thought about inviting any pop-ups from the community to maybe handle the excess? And I don't know if
Anyone else
there's,
mentioned that? I think you all had some conversation on that.
Thank you for that question, Rob. I think that, Bob, certainly I think some of the conversation, I have not been directly involved, has been the possibility of some food trucks also perhaps being invited to come. I do think that one of the questions has always been, in terms of having food trucks from out of IV coming, has been the impact on the local restaurants, right? And wanting to prioritize the local restaurants getting that business. So I do think it's something that we need to, the cutoff that we have for these businesses is 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, with a Monday at noon deadline for us to follow up with them. So I think at that point, we would have a much better sense of capacity, and if we need to expand the effort beyond that.
cool. Yeah, okay. No, I totally agree. If we can get the volume out of the local businesses, that'd be great.
Most definitely.
Director Freeman.
Yeah, so 1.5 questions, I guess. Just to verify I heard correctly, from Catherine's question, there's a concert. Where is the concert being held?
It's a virtual concert.
Oh, that's a virtual concert.
Board.
Okay.
AS
right.
Program Board.
And you said public health saw all of these attachments, I presume, earlier today when the attachments were constructed?
They saw them yesterday.
They saw them yesterday. Okay. But we only got them a couple hours ago. This one. Is that...
Oh, some like the Lucidity budget, they have not seen the Lucidity. I mean, they got today, but most of these attachments were ready yesterday. Me and Spencer wrote
How
that.
about the one
right
that
up.
came up 2 hours ago, which specifically had the layout of the tables and the site plan?
Yeah, no, that's new, but we're gonna approve that site. That's not a final design. That's just a rendering of how they would start designing that, and that's specifically in our contract that all of these plans will have final approval from public health. So Lucidity knows that. They just wanted to include a visual aid.
Okay.
But
And,
that has been forwarded now. That has been forwarded along. But most, like the actual details of the event and what the concept is and what's going to be happening, they knew that since at least yesterday. I mean, they had everything you had yesterday and additional.
Okay. And do we have anything more concrete on what they said? They had it yesterday, and what they actually the reply?
No, I don't. I mean, all we
Okay.
know is that, we were with Gina was in a meeting with us earlier, and she says she's feeling positive and they're working on it and they're getting close.
Okay. Those are, again, the end of my clarifying questions. I have many opinions when we get to that point, but I will end now.
The only thing I'd add is the best suggestion I've heard in terms of an analogy is the current situation on State Street, where there are outdoor dining that is not exactly like what we're proposing. I think in a lot of ways we're going the extra mile compared to what's going on there, but that has been hinted at in terms of an analogy. Are there any other questions from board members? I'm not seeing any, but I do see a question in the chat too from Ash about if people who are living in their vehicles or houseless, essentially people without addresses, will still be able to attend and get that ticket. And I'll say this hasn't been a question that has come up for us yet, but I feel very comfortable saying that we, I think, should treat this the same way that the government treats anything else with voter registration or otherwise, that it's also very sufficient to describe where you generally stay. You don't need to have an address in order to attend. We want to be inclusive. Okay, so with that, I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think what I'll do is I'll open it up to discussion on the proposal from the board. Director Freeman.
All right. So some of you have heard me say this part before. I'm sorry this will sound boring, and some of you have heard other parts before. But I know some of you are new on the board, and of course we have new public, and so that's why I'm going through some of these things again. Actually, just last night, found myself riffling through and watching, speed watching at 2x some of the meetings we had from December of 2019 about this event, and hearing myself say some of the things that I'm about to say again. I have had a long history with this thought process. It's something that I provide this context in order to say that I'm not like against all of these thoughts always. So in 2003, I wrote an article for the Daily Nexus on Halloween could be fun if Isla Vista were a democracy. And a lot of my premise was the idea that the clampdown on large events and the way that clampdown was done was something that I did not like, and that there could be ways of having safer events and that would still have a large amount of people and have a large amount of fun. And that maybe one day we could establish a city and be able to have as an organization on that. Now, at the time, my political thought process wasn't very well organized. It's not something that I really came around to until a decade after that point. But that I've for a long time have been against the just no fun allowed version of doing dealing with Isla Vista. I also want to say, for context for people, that I care a lot about local business, and a lot of the people who own local businesses in the area are friends of mine. In the last 3 months, the only person whose name that I know who I've seen in person is is like, she's awkward that I say that because I'm so bad at names, but the person I say that, yeah, the guy who owns Nonstop, whose name is now blanking on me, Sonny, who's Sonny from Nonstop. And I care a lot about the local businesses, enough to have worked with Rodney. I was the vice president of the Isla Vista Downtown Business Association. One of the things that I was advocating for was that we should not crack down on a lot of big events, and we should try to have alternative programming and try to maintain these events, because it's important for local businesses to be able to have to be able to have that business. And to the extent to which we've shut down Deltopia and shut down Halloween, we've ended up in a situation where local businesses are losing a lot of the revenue that they rely upon throughout the course of the spiky year that we have in Isla Vista. Okay, so that's context now on me. I now want to provide my standing objections to these premises, which are that it does not seem to me that we have the legal jurisdiction to do this. I appreciate that there's even a whereas clause now in the contract from our lawyers trying to state that this is a community facility and that we are running an event on specifically the streets and sidewalks of Isla Vista in order to pull upon what's ostensibly our public works power, almost even there, in order to demonstrate why we can do this. So when we set up this district, I actually cared a lot about a clause in our state law that I helped write. I remember actually being in I was on a trip to Seattle for business, and I was like pulled aside constantly on phone calls with Darcel, working out the last minute negotiations on how these clauses would actually work in order to prevent the Isla Vista Community Service District from doing the job of the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District. The Recreation and Park District does recreation. The Isla Vista Community Service District has a number of powers, including providing facilities. You can refine facilities in an interestingly wide area. A library, for example, is a facility. In order to have a community center, you have to have staff. And so you need to be able to hire janitorial services and be able to have scheduling and all those things like that. A community garden, such as we run, is a facility for the community if you have the ability to have people come and use it and learn and get education from it. But if you are, these are standing things that have location and place. They are something you can point at and say that this is the facility that we kind of invested in and have been operating, and you can have programs that surround that facility. The balance to me doesn't really make any sense when we start saying that we're going to have pop-up facilities that are actually what look to me like recreational events. And I appreciate that there might be frustration with the park district. I'm not saying that I share this frustration, but to the extent to which somebody might be, well, I think that this event should happen. That's great. Go to the park district and leave public comment. If you think that the parks district is doing a bad job as the board, run for their board. There's an opening, actually you missed it as of a couple days ago to file for it, but there was an opening just a few days ago to get on the parks board because they often have vacancies. Honestly, wait another few months, there might be another vacancy. You could be on the parks board making these decisions yourself. But to be on the community services district and say that I want to do these things feels weird to me. All right, so now we look at this specific event and we look at the way in which we've interacted with these with the entity that seems to actually be on board with this, and they've filed a no. I have a little more context on this. They've filed a no on the idea that we are utilizing their resources and have pulled them in at the last minute in order to be on board with this this event, and they kind of want to be left out of it. I appreciate that, and I see where they're coming from. I also though don't feel like we should be now in the position of saying, well, I guess we're going to go along, we're going to kind of bully forward on all these things. Okay, next step, context for the public. I want to point out that when Spencer says where we have landed, Spencer is the president of the Isla Vista Community Service District. Spencer is a representative of the Isla Vista Community Service District in certain cases, but Spencer is not speaking for the Isla Vista Community Service District. I say that only because, not that I think that he's purposely confusing anything. I'm not saying, it does not me badgering on Spencer. Maybe it sounds like that. I really don't mean that to be that way. But I think there could be some confusion from people in the public who hear this is where we have landed, when this is the first meeting we've had about all of these details. There's been discussion in the past about having some kind of alternative programming, having budget for doing things like alternative events, but there hasn't been any prior discussion and any real information provided to the rest of us board members until yesterday about what this actual event will be, that we're going to contract with Lucidity in order to shut down Pardal and fill it up with a bunch of tables to construct the world's largest outdoor, well, not the world's, Isla Vista's largest outdoor dining facility in order to be able able to have this event going through. So now we look at that process then. It's having been thrown together, the lucidity, even only hearing about it apparently, I hear in this meeting on Friday, hearing about the negotiations with other districts, the discussions here, we only getting this information yesterday, only getting the actual site plans and the actual details that I feel were needed, even the staff report that allows me to understand what the budget is really meaning. Earlier today, one of the documents 2 hours before this meeting, as I'm trying to frantically contact people in the public, tell them, have you heard about this event? Have you heard about, trying to make certain that people know that they maybe should come to this meeting if they have an opinion on whether this event should happen or not, because this is all being thrown together extremely quickly. Procedurally, I don't think that's okay. And interestingly, I mean, this is something that George Thurlow is always the person who's always going to poke us on these things. And so I will just, cite George Thurlow staring very sternly at us, saying that, like, I just got this earlier today and you expect me to have read all of this. So fiscally, I've got some objections, which is this is a large expenditure that we're putting together on a tight time frame. As had been mentioned by Kirsten, there is a lot of vagueness to this budget that we are now going to approve contract with relation to how we're going to follow through and pay for it. I don't think that this is a responsible way to spend that much money, is on one day of notice to the board with a vague set of descriptions of high-level items that we're going to spend $30,000 on stuff that's going to happen. I don't think that that's how we should go about these sorts of decisions. Maybe, by the way, we should start thinking about competitive bids on these sorts of projects that even involve these things like events. Okay, now I have ethical objections to what we're doing. We are in the home stretch. We have vaccines being given to people. We have a bunch of people that I know are reporting that they've got the first vaccine. People are getting their second vaccine because they're essential workers in various places. We're looking at being able to actually come out of this. Santa Barbara County just got put into the red tier. Now, I think we've been sitting in purple for so long that I think red might sound really amazing and open, but red is, I mean, on a color scheme that you wouldn't expect to even need purple, you would have had red be the worst color scheme, and then kind of came out of this. Now we got this purple tier, right? Because everything is just so bad. I am very concerned with this idea that we're going to have this giant event just as we come into red tier, and essentially are telegraphing to the community or advertising the community that, look, this is our time. Everything, we're ready to open up because of the fact that we are now in the home stretch. No, we've already got to the plate, and we are now ready to start having people go off and do things, come out in public, have a giant event. This is a really bad moment to do this, and this is an extra bad moment to do this because this is right when, due to the timing of the university and how people work with the university, like how people handle things with the university and everything, everyone will be going to spring break, I guess. It's maybe people will be going home. And then to the extent to which anyone does go home, they all come back here after they've all been other places, traveling through airports, and now they're all going to come here, and we're encouraging them to all show up on Pardal during the same somewhat narrow time window on the same day in order to sit in all these tables we've got organized. This to me does not seem to be, and so Gina had used the term harm reduction when I talked to her. This does not seem to me to be true harm reduction. We look at what harm reduction is. So looking at, there are people who believe that underage sex is bad. So you look at sex education and condoms. That's harm reduction. This is throwing an orgy. If you're looking at issues with drug usage, detox support and injection, safe injection locations, some people would call harm reduction. This is, I think, free heroin, because this isn't information on running safe events. This isn't handing out masks and protection equipment. This is running an event and telling everyone to come here, providing free food, entertainment, and attractions. There was lists of possible options of art installations, scavenger hunts. This is something that we're actually encouraging people who previously might have been like, yeah, no, we're not going to go out today. No, you should come out today, because today is the day of the whole day in the month that all the fun stuff is going to happen, because we're organizing all of the fun stuff. I'm not even certain that this would have been alternative event planning in the context of pre-COVID, for what it's worth, because of the fact that we're kind of providing the a narrow set of activities, and we're kind of helping, I think, just more kind of pre-game things. This discussions happen in the pre-COVID event, alternative event planning as well. But I think this is almost like a worser version of some of the pre-COVID alternative event concepts. But from a COVID alternative event, this to me is not an alternative event. An alternative event would be taking the thing that we don't want them to do and doing the opposite of that, which for what it's worth, we did, I think, somewhat successfully on Halloween. We worked with Lucidity in order to construct an all virtual event, and we had people who were at their homes doing things. Maybe we could, for example, if we're still interested, in helping the local businesses, we could provide vouchers for delivery. We could spread out the time period once it's over delivery, such that we're providing kind of a sequence of events over the course of the whole weekend, or over the course of maybe 2 weekends. I think that there are lots of things that we could do that would be safe and alternative, as opposed to simply being a giant event. Now, I look at this specific event and I ask the question, is it even a safe event? It so far has not been planned sufficiently to make me believe that it will be a safe event. I look at the plan with the tables and where they're located and around. And so, yeah, the table has a 6 foot 7/8 inch radius, and then it is packed into the 22 foot sided square box. And then you actually try to look in at the chairs 6 feet away from each other. Doesn't seem like it. The chairs, not even just within the table, the chairs between multiple tables. You have to think about the ingress and egress paths, people going through there. And what we're essentially doing is saying that we're going to have this giant, because it's eating, maskless event of a bunch of people who are wandering around dealing with tables and everything. There needs to be a lot more planning put into what that would actually mean in order to make that a safe event. Now, my understanding of where public health had landed on this is that when they had heard about it and expressed tentative okay with it, that public health had said that, the public health had only heard about the fact that we were going to be providing food and vouchers for food. What they had not yet heard about was the idea that we were going to have promotion about that combined with art installations and other entertainment. And that the concept of having a promoted event, that stretches these legal boundaries a little bit too far. It's like saying it's legal to have a restaurant where you're providing dining experience. But if you advertise to the entire region that you are having a promotion today, and that everyone should show up between these small number of hours in order to do something at your restaurant, that ends up being a de facto gathering. And if you look at then the difference between, so State Street was mentioned, you look at the difference between what State Street de facto is and what we're doing here, I don't think that they actually look the same. Okay. But now, so now with all of these objections, I just want to remind that, like, I am for the idea of helping businesses. I think that there are things that we could do that are different that could still help businesses. But I also will say that, not everything that I want to have done is something that I think that the IVCSD can do. And I strongly look at that when I think about the issue with large events. I had been interested and continue to be interested in using the Isla Vista Community Service District as a path towards allowing us to have safe and fun events. But I haven't, when I was all those times, the 2 years that I was really advocating, there were people who called me the party candidate and were concerned that I was going to use the Board of Supervisors to push party agendas. But I wasn't looking at using the Isla Vista Community Service District to directly run those events. And I feel like I actually have been somewhat consistent in my application of where I believe our jurisdiction falls, where our responsibility falls, politically what it means for us to work with other districts in the area. And so that's my opinion on this, and the, I think, extensive set of reasons for why I will be voting no, and why I hope everyone here votes no on this event as described. And we can maybe quickly try to brainstorm, probably not today though, some kind of replacement, or we can think about for the future doing things that actually are alternative events. But I can't ethically abide by this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Freeman. Do we have other thoughts from directors? Director Geis.
I just want to say, when I'm looking at this map where they're going to put the tables and everything and closing part all, when I was part of the redevelopment agency and the architects that we brought down, we specifically, and the architects did, design part all to be able to be shut down with this exact thought that we would be doing these kind of events. It never happened in Isla Vista because number one, the RDA went away. And number two, there wasn't any group that had the ability to do events like this. So, you know, in the day, it used to be that we had it to where you could set it up and you could put bands out there. We had electricity. And so it really was, in the design of Part All, it was designed to be designed for closing it down and having events and helping our businesses. So I just want to say, I look at it and I go, well, that's what we were trying to do with this. I also was at a fairly, you know, large event at a big hotel this weekend with a lot of people that it was uncomfortable a little bit because you still had to be masked up. You couldn't do everything that that hotel offered. But I tell you, in the end, it was pretty safe and it was well done. And people, you know, responded to the protocols, and it was mostly around food. And so I don't know. I think the alternative to this is my family and I came out to Isla Vista on Memorial Day because we couldn't find a way to get to the ocean because everything was closed. So I go, come on, let's go to Isla Vista and see what's happening. And we parked in the lot and walked down to Del Playa, and I was with some of the younger members of our family, and they go, why don't we just stay here? Because it was like, you know, people weren't wearing masks. People were jumping in the back of cars going down Del Playa. People had floats out into the ocean. People were just not paying attention to any protocols. There was no, it was Memorial Day. Most of the people were gone, but there were still large volumes of people there. And there was no organization. You didn't have the guardians out there saying, hey, you guys put on your masks. Don't be riding in open air cars down the street. And so I don't know. I hear what Jay's saying, and I do have that trepidation of we're inviting all these groups, but we are also putting some adults, and I don't want to say some adults, but we are putting a firm in place that has an ability to do some of these events in a controlled environment. And that's a little bit different than just having law enforcement come in and having, you know, 20 police officers standing on the corner, not doing anything about COVID, because that's not why they're there. So I don't know. I think it's a risk. I think it's a risk for the district, but it also could be the real setup to doing things different in the future. And if we could be successful, I can see where we grow as a district, the community grows, we learn to handle these events a little bit differently and you know, have events and have fun. And so, you know, I hear Jay's side, but I'll probably take the risk and vote yes.
Thanks for that, Director Geis. Other comments from board members? I'll go to Director Deschler and then Director Bertrand.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I just want to thank Jonathan and Spencer and AS and Deanna and Rodney and others who have really worked very, very quickly to come up with some type of alternative event during the Deltopia weekend. I think the big thing when I think about this is that the event that is being created by the IVCSD is an event that is going to have, that is sanctioned, that is an event that is going to have social distancing, that is going to have people out encouraging COVID-19 safety, and it's an alternative to other gatherings that could be happening on Del Playa. And so I think that it definitely complements what the university is doing. It complements what student affairs is doing. There'll be student health ambassadors, for example, in Isla Vista, handing out information on COVID-19 and giving out masks and that kind of thing. So I think that there's a lot of really good education that can happen during this event. And like I said, I think it really complements a lot of the messaging that's coming out of the university, as well as some of the activities and events that are being planned with AS Program Board and Student Affairs. And I would just say, I think that, you know, some people say you're promoting Deltopia. I don't see it that way. I think that what we're doing is providing an opportunity for people who are feeling like they want to get out, but do it in a way that's safe. And I think if we can look at some of the events that are happening in Florida, at San Luis Obispo yesterday, I think there's a lot of pent up energy and a pent up, you know, spring feelings of wanting to get out and do something. If we can provide something that has a measure of safety to it and has good planning, and we've seen that Lucidity does good planning, and the Guardians, I think it's a great opportunity for the district to really show some leadership in creating a fun and safe community event. So I just want to thank all of you for working so hard on this. And I know it's not baked yet, and I know there's a lot of details, and I know that public health will give it the final okay, but I think you all have done a really good job in a very short amount of time.
Thank you, Director Deschler. Next, I'll go to Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. I'll echo Director Deschler's thanks for everyone who's turned this around very quickly. It's very creative. You've been responsive to the issues that we face, and it's bold as well. To start off, I'll move back to Director Freeman's comments, which first off, on the matter of operating community facilities, I completely disagree with his position on that. I do think that this is firmly in line with our power, and I am excited that whether during COVID or not, we are looking into and working towards investing in these important community pop-up facility events. Though I know that's Director Freeman's position and he knows this is mine, but just wanted to start with that. On the health side, I'll be honest, I think I'm pretty cautious, and I've had to give this all a lot of thought. I do hear the harm reduction element of this, and I do think that absolutely this is harm reduction for Deltopia. Where I've really had to focus on is this harm reduction for COVID. And I think so, I think it is. I think that it is a lot safer for people to come to a program like this than to gather in backyards with larger groups, or on balconies or in the streets. However, I think it's really important that we're intentional about producing that result. And I'm confident that we can do that through our messaging, but that really needs to be intentional. When thinking about folks gathering in the streets at the tables that we're looking at right now, I think that looks like a lot of fun. But I heard Director Freeman's concerns about that. And I'm also concerned about just what things look like when there's a picture posted on social media, does it look like there's a huge gathering in the street in Isla Vista? So with that in mind, I asked the group to at least explore the thought about maybe spreading tables farther out and not just focusing on people eating in the public right of way, but also maybe this is people picking up the supplies to have Deltopia at home. Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe some people are eating at the limited number of tables in the streets, others are at home. But perhaps that's a little bit of a compromise, because one thing I've noticed is that as we've emerged from some of the very challenging times of COVID, where we've had very high case rates and lots of restrictions, when you see these large crowds, it can really send a message as far as, oh, are we able to just gather now? And definitely want to avoid that. As may have been mentioned before, right now, people from up to 3 households can gather in small groups outdoors, So we are seeing people able to come together more, but still just want to be cautious to avoid large crowds with different people mixing. So I'll lay that out as my opening comments. In general, I'm glad that we're doing something bold. I definitely think that, as Director Deshler just mentioned, people have a lot of pent-up energy right now. And I know at our last meeting, I mentioned that I really was proud of our community last year for Deltopia, where everyone just stayed put. And I think if I'm being realistic, I know that it can't be exactly that way this year. People have been home for a year, but just making sure that we're balancing reality with the need for safety and strong prevention measures to prevent the spread of COVID. And then lastly, I'll hint at something that Director Geis mentioned, which is just the benefit of investing in something other than just police, which, I mean, living in IV for about 7 years now, when we have Deltopia every year and when we have Halloween every year, at this point, it's just kind of heartbreaking to see the police response to it. There was a time when safety was uncertain and different things were tried. And I think there were good intentions at the time. But now when we just see police used as the main way to handle the situation, it does not feel pleasant. It's not a pleasant experience as a community member, and it doesn't feel safe. So I'm glad that we're offering something positive, something different for that. So those are my opening comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. I'll go to Director Aguilar and then Director Flaherty.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to the team for working on this. This is a very complicated issue. I find myself personally as a community member, as a director here, conflicted. Of course, there's plenty of very positive, healthy traditions with Deltopia, and there's many dangerous and bad traditions with Deltopia. On this particular year, two things I'm very excited about this proposal is the policing versus the guardians idea. I'm going to agree with Ethan and say that it's really sad to see police in the form of intimidation as the way that the powers that be in Isla Vista decide to encourage safety through intimidation. I don't think that's a good idea. That's not healthy for anyone. I want to move quickly to a point that Director Geis made about beach closures in the past. And so this past year, 4th of July, Santa Barbara County had most of the beaches closed. And I saw that enforced as I looked for a place to go outside, thinking that the beach next to my house was going to be closed. It was not closed. There was zero enforcement by police. And that in turn led to a ton of people coming to Isla Vista for the 4th of July holiday. Families, adults, everyone, which then turns us into the image of bad behavior, the image of gathering when we're told not to gather because we're the only place where it's able to happen. That's a concern I kind of have with Deltopia, being that if we have this event, we could possibly be having tons of other people from outside of Isla Vista come. And I know that's something this proposal is aimed at stopping. But I think there's, in general, we can't stop who comes into IV, and it's just impossible really without some kind of weird policing thing, which I'm against. Now to go and focus on harm reduction. When I think about harm reduction in the sense of Deltopia, I think this is a great idea. When I consider the risk factors of COVID, it's 50-50 for me. It's very iffy. I would like to see a better design or a more visual layout of what these tables will look like and where they'll be placed and what the enforcing of a guardian looks like. Are they, I work in a library and we're trying to enforce rules in a small space constantly, and it's nearly impossible. So I don't know how we're going to be enforcing masks and social distancing out in the open air. I see plenty of businesses that are having open air dining in Isla Vista, but if I was to be my strictest public health type of person, I wouldn't say that things are 100% safe. So I have my reservations on supporting this whole proposal. I wish that we could have discussed it for a few more meetings and fleshed out these details more. And like Jay mentioned, I have some serious reservations about the numbers and spending when we haven't got to look at these details in depth very much. So yeah, I have to explain that I'm very much like in a complicated position. I wish things were different. And if we weren't in COVID, this would still be a very complicated conversation. But when I see COVID, as Jay explained, we're just kind of near the final stretch where people are about to be vaccinated and things will hopefully be a little bit more normal. It feels strange to say like, hey, like start having fun again. I just worry that we're going to be painted in a very bad image for creating a problem. We don't know what Santa Barbara will look like on April 3rd. Plenty of things could change in the meantime. So yeah, I'm very much conflicted on this whole topic.
Thank you for that, Director Aguilar. Director Flaherty, go ahead.
Yeah, I share really similar ideas to Director Aguilar. I've been thinking about this a lot since all the information was sent out, and I've been trying to talk to as many people as I can. And it almost provides like not really a lot of clarity, like even with talking to people, just because, you know, I really do see like how close we are to at least getting our community members vaccinated, and we're so close to that. And you know, I do have some general concerns on the safety aspect of this. Like, I almost wish it could be like a thrift market thing instead, because with masks with eating you have to take off your mask, and you know, if you were just walking around buying art or something, like there's no reason for you to be taking off your mask. And you know, part of me is worried it'll just turn into just drunchies for people who have already partied, and then they come here and you know, they've already been with a lot of people and now they're sitting at these tables, and you know, what if they see someone they haven't seen in a while and like your guard's lowered because you're drunk and you just go say hi to another table. So I think that's where the enforcement would really be important, because I could see people seeing their friends at another table who they maybe haven't seen in a while and say, oh my God, hi, like, and then, yeah, I have some other notes too. I'm like torn as if this would be like a compliment as opposed to an alternative. That's what I'm also torn on as well. And if not enforced correctly, I mean, I think it could like reflect poorly. Like if someone took a picture of it, I don't know, it just feels a little weird to me, like just especially like having taken COVID just like so seriously and like safety precautions for so long and being close to people being vaccinated. But I also do see the benefit of trying to provide an alternative, because people are really wanting to go out and the weather's going to be nice, and you know, regulation with the guardians would be really, really key in this, especially like because it wouldn't be the police regulating. So I like the idea of a pickup that Jay mentioned, like that hybrid idea, like Ethan hinted at too, like could be good, because I think if we did go through this with this event, the messaging would have to be very, very clear. Like, this is a COVID safe event. If you are unsafe, you will get kicked out. We're not messing around, kind of thing. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and like I get it, but then from a COVID perspective, I just like I'm so I don't know. I really see it. I think it's just a risk that we're taking, and it's really hard to see, you know, whether or not it would pay off or not, just because you can't really necessarily predict exactly how it's going to turn out, you know. So it definitely would be a big risk that we're taking. So yeah, just trying to see in my mind whether or not it would pay off. But I do understand why this is being considered too. So that's kind of where I am right now. I get like reservations because I do share similar ones, but I do see possible benefits, but those benefits are contingent on a lot of things. And then this would be pretty expensive too. So that was kind of a ramble, but those are my general thoughts right now. So.
Thank you for those comments, Director Flaherty. So at this point, I think it's been great to hear from directors about our opening thoughts, but I think it'll be good for us to hear from the public. So I'm gonna open up public comment. Please indicate you want to speak by pressing the raise hand icon or putting something in the chat indicating that you'd like to speak. And the first speaker that I see is Mark Vucevic. So I'm gonna go over to you, Mark, to be followed by John Foran.
Hi, thanks, Spencer. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had more thoughts as a public commenter as I have on this one. I find myself a little bit surprised saying this, but I really think Director Freeman is making a really compelling point about the about the merits of the event. I can't speak to the legality though. Something that comes to mind is I just personally, as a current student, am not totally convinced that this is going to stop people from partying. I just haven't seen that data. And as a current student myself, I really resonated a lot with what Director Flaherty said about this is just an opportunity for people outdoors who are eating to maybe see their other friends and let their guard down in a way that they hadn't before. And I think that's the time those are the times that I've let my guard down the most personally during this pandemic, is when I see someone I haven't seen in a while, and I just kind of get back in that habit of seeing someone again. And so I guess on a psychological scale of current students, that really resonated with me. And I also I feel kind of similar about, I think, what Director Bertrand said about the optics about this event. Seeing an Instagram post where if this event goes super successfully and there's tons of people out, it just doesn't feel that great for what our community has already experienced in terms of the bias against it and the larger county. And also what maybe other current students who are back home are thinking about Isla Vista and seeing these posts on Instagram or Snapchat or et cetera. I also am thinking about something like beach openings that Director Aguilar mentioned. And I guess I don't know if I'm disagreeing with him per se, but to me, a beach opening is almost like a lovely alternative on Deltopia, because it's encouraging people who may be making poor decisions to at least be doing it outdoors and in a safe way, rather than a house party, like we had previously said. I know there's the history of trash being on Isla Vista beaches, and I totally recognize that on a marine ecological level. But if we're trying to have people, maybe doing less safe things, but at least outdoors, and do it kind of easily and less expensively, that, to me, that seems like a better alternative than house parties. And the other thing I'll say is, I haven't worked in the events industry for a few years, but when I did work in the events industry, I'll just say, just an offhand look at the budget, this just felt a little bit high. And ultimately, I guess I just feel like this is a rushed process when I want my government to be doing very deliberate processes and really thoughtful and intentional processes. And that's one of my biggest concerns, is I don't want to be having my tax money pay for haste. I want something, I want to really be able to make sure that we're thinking about this really intentionally and thoughtfully. And also think what is the alternative of this event monetarily? I would love to see, I would love to see these vouchers instead go for having all UCSB students get tested week 1. And have a voucher for them to get tested. They get their restaurant voucher if they come and get a test at UCSB, or if they would get a COVID test at the Friday Saturday site at Ivy Theater instead. Like, to me, that feels like real harm reduction, and also like supporting the small businesses, or even having this event once like vaccines are readily available, and have like a vaccine drive where we get to have like people, eat outdoors and then get their vaccine and go home. Something like, to me, that makes sort of more sense to me. So I guess, yeah, I've never said this, but like, I really encourage the board to vote no on this, because I just have a lot of reservations about this. Even though I in general kind of love this idea for Isla Vista, and I think it's what I hope to see in the future, just not right now. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we're going to go to John Foran, to be followed by Ash.
Hi, I'll try to be brief, but I'm going to speak in what for me are strong terms, I hope. And I do understand the desire of everybody to start to live again. It's been, yeah, for sure. I also appreciate the underlying intent, I think, on the part of the board and some of the other parties to do something that will be better than the alternative of doing nothing and letting, or doing as creative an intervention as possible with what happens on the first weekend of the spring quarter. And I appreciate the detail too, and the coordination among all the groups. But I think everybody's ignoring the elephant in the room here, and it's a pandemic, folks. A pandemic, a once in everybody's lifetime global event. And maybe people don't know that at this very minute in Germany and other European countries, they're going into lockdown again. Maybe people don't know that in Brazil yesterday, 5,500 people died in one day. All we know is we're in the red here. So yeah, that's good, right? And I think that the message, therefore, that you're sending to the community and the world, because this will be a spectacularly large event happening at this time in a progressive place. I don't think that message is particularly heroic, to be honest with you. And I think that the overconfidence that you have in a hastily drawn up plan in the midst of a changing situation is, I can't even read my notes. It just doesn't seem like you're protecting the public here with this event. I think we have to take into account the safety of the community more. I think that's the bottom line here. I certainly listened very carefully to Jay's very broad and comprehensive critique of this event. And in the climate struggle, there's something called the Precautionary Principle. And that is that, and I don't think we should all live our lives in every decision by this, but if you're looking at something that has even a small chance of going terribly wrong, then you're not being responsible to not take that into account. And I think we have to be thinking about what could go wrong here. How many things have to work perfectly for this event to go as you've outlined it? And I really think, yeah, as Mark said, we can wait and do so much more with $60,000 when we're thoughtful about it and maybe spread it out. And it just feels to me like it would be shameful, actually, for the CSD to vote in favor of this and for UCSB to back it as well. And I think I can stop there.
Thank you, John. Next on stack, I have Ash, to be followed by Katie.
Okay, hello. I love you all, and I love a lot of this concept of opening up Pardal, like Director Geis was saying, but I don't think I would vote for this. I don't think eating is a safe focus. When you're eating, not only is your mask off, but you're spraying droplets. As John was saying, around the world, people are facing some really strong cases with new variants that they say are even more contagious. So we all know outdoors is better, but I don't think encouraging people to eat near like thousands of people is safe at all. The majority of college age people haven't been vaccinated at all, I don't think, and certainly not both of them. But you know, supposedly we will be in a couple months. So I don't think this is the right time for this. Yeah, maybe it would be better if the timing was spread out with, because like, yeah, I like the idea of the meal vouchers, but instead of you having to redeem them all in one day, what if it was over a bigger period of time? I think people will be mad about their AS money being spent this way. People who are choosing to stay home with their parents and then can't even access this. I think those people want their money refunded. That's probably not on the table, but I think there's gonna, yeah, I feel bad. I love lucidity, and I don't think that, you know, even if you voted for this today, I don't think that it's going to be approved to be safe. I think too many problems with it as it's drawn up are going to come up. So I feel bad for them having to like come up with the plans, and then if it ends up being canceled. So, yep. I guess that's it for me.
Thank you, Ash. Next, we have Katie. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Katie Maynard. I'm speaking as an individual today and not representing any organization. I really do not understand the messaging of this event. Please do not have gatherings, but it's okay to gather with 6,000 people. Please wear a mask, but you can take off your mask to eat next to 6,000 people in 4 hours. Please quarantine after you travel for spring break. Oh, but you can break quarantine to come to our event a week after spring break. We've talked a lot about messaging and public health messages and enforcement, but I don't understand the messaging or what you would be enforcing while you're sending so many mixed messages. The planning for this has not been done well, and I'm sorry. I know that there's a lot of people here who've been working really hard over the past week, but the idea that the main event planner wasn't even asked about this event until last Friday does not give me confidence that this can be a safe event. This is not well thought through. I'm incredibly concerned that the group that is being tasked and funded at a very high level to be able to enforce COVID restrictions at this event submitted a design for the event that puts chairs less than 6 feet apart. How can we trust an organization to run an event in the middle of COVID, a very high risk event, help to enforce and educate people about the rules when they're putting a diagram with chairs less than 6 feet apart? I just don't understand that. I think Lucidity is a great organization. I think they do great work when they have the time to do it. And I think what we're seeing is them not having the time to do the good work that they would normally do. The 22 feet minus 12 feet for the tables, you're down to 10 feet. And then you've got 4 chairs across that. That's one, they've only allocated 1 foot per chair to get to your 6 foot distance. That's just not practical. That's not good planning. The vagueness in the budget, the vagueness in the proposal is an indication that the planning has not been put in to make this a safe event. I am very concerned that the IVCSD is spending so much money without competitive bids, without spending the time to really get a detailed proposal. I'm very concerned with Christian asked about how are we getting a budget with such broad categories, with such vagueness? This isn't good financial support. I'm also very concerned that Ivy Rec and Parks District, which has done this, which knows what goes into planning these events, which is tasked with doing these events, is so uncomfortable with this event that they're not supporting it and they're not a co-host at the table. That is a major warning sign for me. And I think we need to be working with the Isla Vista Recreation Parks District to be planning these events on a timeline they feel comfortable with and can support, because they're the experts in Isla Vista. They know what it takes to run this event. And the fact that they're uncomfortable with this, the fact that they're not here today, that they're not supporting this and not co-hosting this is a major concern for me. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a bit emotional right now, but I've been working on helping students to address food insecurity. And in particular, I run a program to support students that go into quarantine. I know what the impact of doing an event like this are. I know what this is going to look like the 2 weeks after the event. I know that I'm going to be the one out there delivering food to every one of the students that's going to get COVID as a result of this event. And I don't know if we have the capacity for it. We are trying so hard to raise the funds, pull the volunteers, get the resources together to be able to support our students. And I don't know if we can handle a 6,000 person event over a 4 to 5 hour period. That math doesn't work. Like there is no way to social distance at the number of people you're talking about in the incredibly short time period that you're talking about, while everybody's not wearing a mask because they're eating, because that's what the focus of the event is. I'm speaking for myself and nobody else. I'm not speaking for the organization, for any organization today, but this event truly breaks my heart. And I strongly encourage you not to move forward with this.
Thank you, Katie. I see another hand from John Foran. John, do you have another comment you'd like to make?
Hi, this is actually Katie Murray, and my comment is going to be brief today. I'm saying I'm in favor of much cheaper and frequent virtual events. I'd like to see many, many virtual events at the moment, after seeing several more planning meetings. And I'd like to see the money, the vast amount of money that's going into planning this event used to support people affected by the pandemic. The type of work that Katie's doing, a lot of people really are suffering in this community, whether it's from food insecurity or the many other effects of the pandemic. And I'd like to see the CSD really step up and put their money where it's really affecting people, because a lot of people are really hurting right now. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Katie. Are there any other comments from members of the public? I see a hand from Deanna.
Thank you again, Director Brandt. I want to just make a couple of clarifying points. I do recognize that the event in regard to this conversation is really tricky. And I want to kind of just explain AS's position on this. As I mentioned before, our focus for this really is on the intervention, which is to get food to students and to other community members to try to mitigate the impact of Deltopia. The question about the event, quote unquote, the event being from 11 to 4:30, that's actually the distribution of tickets. And I'm not sure on the staffing side in terms of Lucidity and the CSD, what the thinking is about going beyond that. But as far as the food, from our perspective, that food would be available to anybody, who has the ticket during the hours of operation of those businesses. So if a business like Woodstocks is open until midnight, that ticket could be used until midnight. And so it would not be 6,000 students or 6,000 anybody being in that location at the same time. It really is trying to meter that out. But I want to just be super clear that I really support the thoughts and the efforts of how to bring this together under kind of this umbrella of an event. For our purposes going forward, and this of course will continue to be a decision that program board makes, whether it's takeout, which is what we originally thought this was really going to be the focus, is food being taken out and taken home or taken elsewhere. That for us, those mechanics are not the most important part, other than obviously understanding the concerns that people are raising. It really is about getting food to primarily students on that day.
Thank you for those comments, Deanna. Are there any other comments from members of the public? All right, I'm not seeing any other comments, so I'll bring it back to our board. And I'll start off by just thanking everyone who spoke during public comment, because I want you to know that we really do hear you and take seriously your thoughts, opinions, and appreciate that we can have this space as a board where we can all just be a signing board for each other and provide feedback and input. And I hear a really strong voice coming from the public that now is not the right time for this. I want to address something that I feel may have gotten a little bit lost in the discussion, which is that I think we presented ourselves with a false choice. Unfortunately, I think if you look at the examples that we're seeing around the country, first in Colorado Boulder, where 2 weeks ago there was a riot where police responded with MRAPs, tear gas, and rubber bullets in a very similar situation to Deltopia 2014. The events ongoing over the last couple of weeks in South Florida, as well as this past weekend, only about 100 miles away in San Luis Obispo, where crowds and riotous events took place. I think it's pretty fair to be able to look at that and say that without an intervention, I fear that's where we're headed here. And I think that this will be an interesting conversation to look back on, a couple weeks from now. We don't have a silver bullet for Deltopia. We don't have a silver bullet for COVID. But I will always be supportive of everything that we can do in order to reduce the amount of risk that's involved in the situation. Starting this quarter, I was reached out to and contacted by students who were incredibly concerned about the gatherings that were reemerging. Large parties on balconies that were not all outdoors, some were indoors. Similar gatherings on the beach that were crowds, that were any lay person could tell, similar to what Director Geis saw, were very unsafe situations. And the common thread between all of those, there was no organization, there was no order, there was no social distancing dots per se, that we see in private public spaces. And I think back to our board when we had this discussion with the community last year and went through a big public process where we talked about large events. It's one of the big conclusions that I think we came to, which is that part of the problems that occur when Deltopia happens, the health issues when it comes to alcohol poisoning and drug usage that goes wrong, sexual violence and assault that happens as a result of these large parties that are centered completely around alcohol. And in this case now, the public safety of COVID, that's a result of no order. It's a result of no planning. And those sorts of things don't happen when we plan, when we think out methodically, and when we give people an alternative that they can attend and have a good time at, that isn't centered around that culture. Like I said, that being said, I hear from the community that now is not the right time. But I want to challenge us going forward, because going forward, I don't think that the most creative, innovative community on the planet that I am just so grateful to have gotten to live in for the past 5 years, I don't think this is the best we can do. I don't think saying no to things, and I don't think having an attitude of working in silos is the best thing we can do. I think we can do better, and I hope that we will going forward. So with that, I'll open it up for other directors, but I don't think that it'll be necessary for us to take a vote on this. I think, if anything, I'd entertain a motion to table it.
Spencer, if I may, well, first off, thank you to everyone who spoke. Really appreciate your comments. And what I'm thinking right now is that, yes, we do need to adjust this. It's not the right time to have an event that brings people together, even though I think there are a lot of safety measures here. And I agree with what you brought up earlier about State Street and other open dining areas. But that being said, I still think it's imperative for us to be doing something proactive to make sure that people are staying safe during Deltopia. And a lot of those efforts were within this project. But I think we need to look at how we're going to salvage some of those outreach efforts and perhaps some of the alternative programming efforts because there is a need for that. It's imperative that our district, that UCSB, that City College, and that Isla Vista Recreation and Park District are all doing things proactively for Deltopia. And I want to thank you for developing this idea, which as we've heard it more and we've discussed, we all recognize is not going to meet the needs of this moment, but let's figure out what we can take from this proposal to actually make a difference. Because I agree with your caution that you provided about what we've seen in other cities, other college towns that have not acted proactively and what we've seen here in the past. And we know that's not what we want. So I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for how we can still do outreach, how we can still support Associated Students' alternative event, if there's a need for additional virtual programming, what can we do to still make this successful?
Thanks for that comment, Ethan. I guess I would defer to staff if they're already, we probably have to go back to the drawing board, and I know we're kind of up against our deadline right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on anything we can do right now. We'll need to figure that out. But direction on what you all want is good.
Yeah. So I'll go to Director Flaherty and then Director Deschler.
Yeah, I'm thinking our messaging, has to remain consistent and strict as we still work towards vaccinating people. I know, through conversation, there was one idea of, I don't know if we could open another testing site that weekend and encourage people to go get tested instead. I know there was a possible idea of I wish we could just have a vaccination tent and instead of going out, you just go get your shot and that's your first dose. You get the Johnson & Johnson or something, and it's only 2 weeks until you're fully vaccinated or whatever. I mean, I don't know if that's possible at all, but that messaging would be definitely more aligned with, safety oriented. Yeah, I see the comment of takeout food would be really cool. So I would I would support that idea, but maybe we do open another testing site that community members can go to and stress that instead. And yeah, those are just some thoughts right now.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. Director Deschler.
I was just going to say, I feel, I just wanted to thank the people that spoke during the public comments. It was really moving to hear people's perspective. And Katie Maynard, I'm a big fan of her. She does really incredible work in the community. And so I just really wanted to acknowledge her and Mark and Professor Ferran and Katie for their comments. I think, so I just wanted to say that when I looked at this proposal, there was a couple things that stood out for me. And one was, of course, the cost. I thought it was high, but I knew that some of this is going to be worked out. Some of the details will be worked out. But I really heard what, sorry, John says to call him John. Okay, I thought Professor Ferran might be nicer, but whatever. But anyways, one of the things I just wanted to stress is that all of this project, all of these plans were very much conditioned on Santa Barbara County Department of Public Health and their approval. And so I did hear a lot of people talk about droplets and spacing and things like that. And I just wanted to make sure that people realize that none of this was going to go forward without complete approval by Santa Barbara County Public Health Department, and they're amazing people, and they will be looking at this closely and would give us really good advice. But I also hear what Spencer is saying, what others are saying. I do think some type of something that we could do to provide an alternative for people to gathering in a way that is safe and sanctioned and has people out in a positive way, giving messages on masking and COVID and social distancing is a positive thing. And I think supporting our businesses is a positive thing. And so if there's parts of this plan that could be salvaged, I think that some of these parts are really good, like some of the ones I just mentioned. And I think it's just really important to remember that what we're trying to provide is an alternative to people gathering unsafely close together, inebriated on DP.
Thank you, Director Deschler. Are there other comments from board members? Director Freeman.
Hello. I've turned off, it turns out it's actually, they've gotten a little quieter, so I don't think you're actually going to be able to hear it, but I turned off some of the noise filtering that Zoom has because, well, I'll get to that in a second. So first of all, I just want to reply to Bob. A while ago made the comment about how the design process was, we designed Pardal in order to allow us to have tables out there and to shut it down. I mean, I want to be clear, I'm all for that. I mean, I want to shut more things down. I would love to take Del Playa and shut it down, maybe occasionally, maybe permanently to cars and make it a giant promenade area. I love all of those ideas, but I think that the comment that John Foran made really needs to be like triple underscored, which is that this is a pandemic. And so the things that we designed for having a lot of awesome fun and interaction with businesses aren't necessarily the same things that we need right now. And while I would be absolutely for the idea of having all kinds of interesting events with a shutdown Pardal, maybe permanently shutting down Pardal, this is different today. And that also reminds me when he started going over all of the areas around the world that are having issues. There was one of the things in my notes I forgot to bring up. There was just an article today about Santa Barbara County now has seen the more virulent UK version of COVID. Like that's arrived here. We now know that we've got that here, and so this is the time, right, that we're going to start planning to get everyone together and do this kind of event. It's a little weird to me. And then I want to look at something that Catherine had said, which I think was a really great wording for, of whether this is an alternative or a complement. And so people are concerned about there being parties that they're going to get thrown with. People are going to have parties, and one of the issues we've been having parties. The reason I turned off the noise filter and they got quieter then is that I live in frat land. I mean, I'm surrounded by like 3 frats. There's a party going on right now that I'm hearing the music for, the bass thumping, and people do this stuff. That frat's not going to not party because we offer them free food on this day. They're going to party and they're going to go get the food. And they're going to go get the food before their party, and they're going to then go back to the party after having interacted with all their friends. The way that Marcos was describing the attitude of, like, you run into people and then you kind of let your guard down, and that's the moment that all of these mistakes end up happening. I totally get all of, like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I look at this is just going to end up being a complement, not an alternative as is currently constructed. But it seems like, I'm not certain, I mean, the Spencer just wants to retract this voting. I will move to table if that's what we need. Yeah, since I was the last, no one else had their hand raised, I figured I may as well go into a motion. But
I'll go to Director Guntz.
You know, after the public comments, Katie and John, and, you know, and a little bit of reflection, we are near the finish line. And, you know, Mark's comments about, why don't we just take our money and put it towards a vaccination party? You know, I'm kind of all for it. I see what the finish line is. I see where we want to go. And maybe we put our money towards a vaccination party and really do what Catherine says. Everybody goes in the tent and gets a shot, and then we'll give them a free meal. I don't know, but I kind of get a little hesitant. I know exactly what we were doing, and we've been working on this for a long time to do these diversions and get people to get into more organized activities rather than a free-for-all on Del Playa. And I guess the timing for us is, it's just like last year. We got close, but it probably is not going to work. And so I'm kind of with Jay. If Jay wants to make a motion to table this, I'll second it.
All right, so is that a motion? All right, and is that a second from you, Director Geis?
Yes.
I also do want to mention, because I think Director Bertrand brought up a good point about, if there are elements of this that we can try and put together. I know we're at our deadline, so I don't know how much we'll be able to now that we're sort of in this position. But I'll also just mention, I don't think we're agendized to consider alternatives at this time. I see a hand from Director Geis.
Yeah, as an alternative, is there a way that we could use the guardians and pay for that piece of the service with Lucidity, just to have a different method of encouragement, like at the safety tents, if the guardians were kind of hooked on to them, to have a kind of little bit different preference? And do we think that could make a difference?
So I think our council has answered this question, but for the benefit of the public, I'll ask district council if that's allowable.
Are you asking if the board is agendized to be able to discuss that as an alternative, or are you asking if the proposal by Director Geis is something that is permissible under 61250 of the government code?
The latter.
It could go either way, depending upon the way that the final terms are worked out. The essential idea is that within the confines of the district, a temporary facilities, community facilities being operated and supported by IVCSD. That's one of the enumerated powers, is operation and programming for community facilities. Specifically how that's carried out is where I come in and making sure that it's firmly grounded in 61250 rather than not. Providing supplemental services so as not to supplant the services offered, law enforcement offered by UCPD and SBSO, that's a limitation, and not supplanting any other agency. So to the extent that it's supplementing a service that's being provided within the district, yeah, there's definitely a pathway forward to be able to do that. But of course, it's always the specifics and the details that will ultimately bear on the connection to the enumerated powers under 61250.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ross. And it sounds like we're not really agendized to talk too much about the alternatives as it is. I do want to open it up real quickly, just in the spirit of dialogue, because I think I saw a hand from Deanna and I see a comment from Gina. So I'll go to Deanna and then Gina.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to interject. I think I really was just thinking similarly, if there's a way to kind of unpack some of these elements. For example, not address the road closure, but certainly have the safety stations, have the guardians outside of the restaurants, kind of maintain the other elements that are not creating a dining experience, but to really refocus it on a takeout experience. So I think just following some of the comments that have already been made, how can we still pull some of these really important elements from this? Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. And I think my understanding, and I'll ask Jonathan to clarify, is that safety stations, that's something that just is going to happen regardless.
That's happening no matter what.
Yeah, under our existing contract. Okay, good to know. Gina, go ahead.
Hi. I would make a recommendation that your board entertain, I think what some people envision, that it's really not much different than the parklets we see on State Street in downtown Santa Barbara, an opportunity for restaurants just to serve more people into the street. And I would recommend you guys discuss or consider to do that. You have to reach out to Public Works and get public health clearance, you have to have insurance, liability, and restaurants and IV are not going to do that. And one restaurant isn't going to pull a permit to try to shut down Pardal. But if the IVCSD as an entity still moves forward with that process, and then just leave it up to individual restaurants whether or not they want to serve people in the street. So essentially, I would recommend just considering closing the 2 streets of Pardal, keep your north-south arteries still open, and leave it up to the restaurants if they want to. I think coming off of it's going to be quiet over spring break, maybe it could be a weekend that's helpful to restaurants as people trickle back in, but then it's not like an endorsement of a more sophisticated event. And I think your restaurants would probably really appreciate that. And it would take an organized entity to be able to just do that kind of paperwork that's required at the county level.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback, Gina. I think that's a really intriguing idea for us to consider. And those are great points about supporting our business community. Director Freeman, I see a hand from you.
Yes, that's I think what Gina was just saying is a very interesting idea. I mean, tying into what I was saying earlier. I mean, when I go down on Pardal currently, there's no one ever there, and not people. I mean, cars. There are no cars there, and so like we would be able, I think, to take this as an opportunity to shut down Pardal as test, and to potentially shut down Pardal for longer term. And so if we were to go down paths like that, I would be very supportive of it. And we need to make certain that we coordinate, because the businesses have delivery trucks that they care a lot about being able to get in and out. But this is the parking available, like the parking necessity that people would typically have for why they won't shut down Pardal don't apply right now during all this COVID, because there's parking all around that area. So I think that it could be a really fascinating idea to go down. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, I forgot in my previous second, I was going to respond to, Diana was saying something which I really loved this thought, which is that the goal of a lot of this is to get food to students. And this is also something that was pointed out earlier, and I can't remember who it was, might have been Marcos, might have been Ash, talking about the interest in getting resources to people who've been affected by the pandemic. And I kind of, maybe this is just a crazy thought process, but if Associate Students has a bunch of money to spend on food and they want to help distribute it to people who are in need of it, UCSB runs UCSB Food Bank, and potentially take the, sorry, apparently Ash is correcting me that Katie said that. Not Katie, Katie Murray said that. And so with 2 Katie's in the call. And so if that the redirecting that money to food bank seems like it would be a very direct way of accomplishing that very specific and that goal in the most probably efficient way possible. But there's a suggestion to that party, but thank you.
Thanks, Director Freeman. And I see a hand from Deanna. If you'd like to add something.
Thank you. I want to just clarify that you're right. The food bank is the AS food bank. And so we do fund the food bank as it is already through Associated Students. I think it's a great suggestion of continuing to look for ways to supplement that food distribution. And we do continue to always look for ways to supplement it. I think we have, of course, as always, multiple different needs, right? There's a food security need for students overall. There's a need for students who are experiencing, isolation or quarantine from COVID. IVTU is actually funding delivery fees for students who are in isolation or in quarantine. That's currently a program that IVTU is funding. I think that the conversation about understanding that like Katie mentioned, Miramar student food pantry and the food bank are both closed. I think we're always really open to thinking about creative ways that we can leverage more of our resources. But of course, we're also, and so happy to take that back to the groups to consider, but also just wanting to be very clear that specifically as an intervention for Deltopia, right, that we really want to be able to get a focus on the response that we want to have for that day, as much as these are all other really, really important ideas as well. So thank you all for those suggestions.
Thank you for those suggestions, Deanna. And so I guess what I'm hearing, at least conversation around now, is that it sounds like our board wants to participate in some way, wants to do something. I'll put it out there if it's not clear. I definitely think that we should do something. I think doing nothing is an abdication of our responsibility to our constituents. But it's not clear exactly what that would be. So I guess let's take sort of a straw poll from the board. Do we want to try and bring back something that's more along the lines of what Gina has mentioned with a street closure? Do we want to bring something back that includes our COVID-19 messaging and door hangers as we have done in the past? What's the direction that we're going to get? Maybe we should break those things up. Are we all supportive of door hangers and messaging campaign around encouraging our residents not to gather and to, okay, I'm seeing thumbs up, I'm seeing yeses. Okay.
Yes.
All right, now the other element is part all street closure for that we would apply for the permit, but it would be up to the businesses to populate. I'm seeing, I think a thumbs up hand from Director Freeman. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so I'm very excited by the idea of trying to figure out things we can do with shutting down Pardal. I'm a little hesitant on the narrow notion of let's do it as an event. I think that if we do it and very low key and talk to businesses, and then it's even then, I guess I'm concerned about the idea that we're essentially setting up an indirect scenario by which now that it's on the business in order to, well, they're going to promote and tell everyone to come during this day in order to take advantage of their expanded seating. I'm very strongly for, though, the idea of, again, we don't really need Pardal the street right now. Let's say, who do we need to talk to close it down for a month? And that also solves, Mark Vucevic mentioned in the comment, and so businesses are going to rent and buy additional tables during the course of that one one event. Well, if their entire month of expanded, more like State Street style experience or something, that I think will make more sense for everybody. And it definitely, then it also is us doing something in order to help businesses, because some of them are, they, with the lowered density and the extent to which they have people showing up, with the extent, Freebirds has tried to extend seating and to the extent to which they can, but if we can give them the opportunity to have more space, I think they can take advantage of it in a strong way. But so that's why, I'm tentatively, I'm for an even more modified version of that. We try to do it over a longer time period, not like Deltopia event weekend shut down the street. So.
Okay, so how is the board feeling about maybe in the future we bring back the permit item to shut down Pardal, potentially for an extended period of time? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up, I'm seeing some yeses. And of course, yeah, this is all where I know we're kind of workshopping this in public, but it's all pending our conversations with Public Works, because they are the ultimate decision makers on something like that. And this is a different circumstance than what we had previously brought to them. So, okay. Are there other things, I think, and maybe this is a question for lucidity, but I'd be pretty surprised if we could pull off a virtual event. I think we're way past that time. Yeah.
There's no way. There's no way.
Because they had already told us with the car concert. So, okay. So are there other things that the board would like us to bring back?
One thing I'll mention is I think we just have to figure out what our message is. I think that we can certainly tell people to just stay home as we've done in the past. That may be appropriate. But right now, the health guidance from California Department of Public Health and the local health agency is that people can gather in small groups up to 3 households. So I don't know if that's our harm reduction strategy to promote that, if we tell people to just stay home. But I think we have to figure that out, what our message is.
Director Flaherty?
feel like with that, it's kind of like an all or nothing messaging. I think we should really try to still push for people staying within their household. I think if we do go a little less or a little loose with our messaging, you just don't want that to be misinterpreted. It's like, I'm really bad with sayings, but it's like if you give someone a little bit and then they go the mile, like, is that right? Something. But I'm just worried that might open like space for more mixing. And so I think our messaging should be very clear to, please stay within your household, get tested. There's a lot of testing. Students can go through student health. And then on the weekend of Deltopia, there will still be testing. So for me personally, I think maybe Deltopia weekend isn't the best time to change the messaging. So I'm leaning more towards stay in your house, but I'm open to hearing other people's ideas as well.
All right, is there anything else that the board wants us to bring back? Let's stick it to just topics that we can bring back at a future meeting since we're not completely on agenda.
One thing, by the way, we technically have the motion to the table that you had entertained and then we're given with a second. I don't know if if we don't want to bother with that, I retract that, but I don't know if you wanted to actually we'd have to vote on it if we don't retract it, I guess.
Well, I think now that we're in a separate discussion about bringing other stuff back, maybe we can forego that motion if it's the will of the maker and the seconder, and instead just have staff bring this stuff back to us.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. So I'll check in with Jonathan because we're workshopping all this. Do you feel like you have clear direction?
I don't think it's totally clear, but I think we got it. I'm being honest. I don't think it's completely clear. I think we're going to shut down Pardal for a month and potentially get the safety, not potentially have the safety stations out there. Is there anything else?
I think the messaging.
Yeah.
Door hangers. Yeah. Is that what you were going to say, Director Deschler?
Yeah, I was just saying that I would, I know IVCSD, I know Jonathan is working with the county and the university, but I would just encourage that the messaging is consistent and that all three entities are working together. And I just wanted to support the door hangers.
All right. Is that clear, more clear now, Jonathan?
Sure thing, yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank everyone who put a lot of work into trying to put something together for this Deltopia weekend. And, I'm manifesting, I'm hoping and praying that we have a safe weekend and that we have a healthy weekend. But I also can read the writing on the wall. So I'm also trying to be realistic with my expectations. So, okay. Now we do actually have another item on our agenda, believe it or not. And this is on a somewhat different subject, but it did come in last minute and it worked really well. And it's from the Executive Director of Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. So Jonathan, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, so it's kind of serendipitous. They sent us this after our last regular meeting with the deadline of today to send in a letter of support. And we obviously were not going to meet until we thought we were having a special meeting. So we got this on the agenda. It's a letter of support to SB County Association of Governments on their application for a 101 highway project. And they made the reach out to us to ask if we could support it, since they're one of our partners on the STEP grant.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Any board comment or questions? Dr. Geis?
Yeah, so what is the project? It was kind of, the agenda item wasn't clear what they were doing. I've been down Highway 101 and they're doing a lot of work.
I attached the attachment. I honestly have not studied it. It looks like it's just, it's a multimodal project. There's, they're gonna encourage more mode shift I'm really not completely familiar with this since I've been focusing on the Deltopia issue this
Yeah, I
week.
gotcha.
Bob, if I can add to that, some of the improvements they're looking to make are specific to reducing greenhouse gases, such as, what are they called? HOV lanes, encouraging car share, and promoting public transportation, and other sorts of infrastructure improvements. And then this is a letter in support of their application for a grant. So it's our support for their grant application.
And so I noticed in the thing, it said intermodal transportation. So it encompasses all those types of alternative transportation, or the way to get greenhouse gases to get reduced is to like use the train, or.
This is specific to the US 101, so it's specific to road types of alternative and regular transportation. So it doesn't encompass the train. And the reason we brought it to the board is because it's in line with sort of our goal of increasing, coordination and enhancing delivery of public services in and around Isla Vista.
Okay.
Director Freeman.
So I will first admit that I don't have all the background that I would love to have in the statements I'm about to make, but I've got some thoughts. One thing that oftentimes comes up when you're looking at projects about providing more capacity is that it actually weirdly causes, through a mechanism of incentives, increased congestion. But there's some interesting specific points about this project that I feel mitigate some of the knee-jerk thoughts I sometimes have to, you want to increase the capacity of the highway, and a couple of the aspects of it are that they kind of mention it, but I always want to underscore it, the idea that we are actually weirdly isolated, that when there was mentioned the Montecito debris flow caused closures that kind of just trapped us in one direction, and people had to go around the long route, and essentially you just suddenly, because of the fact that we have the fire and flood plain issues, we almost have like unique issues with when we're thinking about highway congestion, that suddenly we could double the highway congestion that we need in certain directions. And so seeing that that argument process was somewhat moving to me, and then combined with the fact that trying to provide the high occupancy lane for the people who are relying on buses and carpooling, and it seems like, because we are currently in a situation where even if you are going to carpool, it is so variable during rush hour to figure out how long it's going to take to get anywhere, because of the limit. Essentially, it's just 101 or 192 or 192, and so I look at this and I'm like, oh sure. I again, normally I kind of have a knee jerk, wow, increasing capacity of all the highways lanes and everything, but it's just like they make a compelling argument and have some interesting other mitigations that I'm excited about. So.
All right. Thank you for that commentary, Director Freeman. Director Deschler.
I was just going to make a comment because I've seen this letter before. So essentially what this letter is a letter to the Federal Department of Transportation for funding for a grant for funding to complete the Highway 101 expansion project. And what it is doing is adding, it is intermodal in terms of adding new lanes, but it's also adding carpool lanes, peak hour carpool lanes to encourage alternate transportation, van pool, that kind of thing. So it's part of a regional strategy to try and improve the 101 and increase capacity for different types of van pools, carpools, buses, that kind of thing. So that's all. I just wanted to say it seems pretty benign to me. It seems like something our region really needs because we are so dependent on the 101. So that was my information.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Deschler. Are there any other board comments? All right, any public comments on the letter of support for the grant proposal? Okay, we'll bring it back to our board. So I think what we're probably looking for is approval of letters of support, and you can include in there that myself and Jonathan will make edits to this letter to give it a little bit of Isla Vista flair, so that it's not just cut and paste style advocacy. But I'm open to a motion if anyone has one.
Are you going or am I going to go?
I will move to approve sending a letter of support for the SBCAG grant proposal, along with edits from Jonathan and Spencer to add an Isla Vista flair.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Director Freeman, seconded by Director Deschler. Any public comment on the motion? All right, any other board discussion? Let's go to a roll call vote.
Great. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Geis?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, that brings us to the end of our meeting. The next meeting will take place on March 23rd at 6 p.m. Future meeting dates and agenda items. Any future agenda items to discuss, Jonathan?
I think we discussed them.
I think we did too. All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
I'll
move to adjourn.
Oh.
I will second Kirsten's motion to adjourn.
All right, made by Dustner, seconded by Freeman. Any public comment or discussion? All right, let's go to a vote.
Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Deschler?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
And Geis?
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
See you guys. Good work, by the way.